Hi, my name is Stephen Walther, and in this video, I'm going to be talking about models, views, and controllers. In other words, I'm going to be talking about the MVC in an ASP.NET MVC application. So let me start by describing models, views, and controllers. I'm going to start by talking about controllers. What's a controller? A controller in an ASP.NET MVC application is responsible for controlling a user's interaction with the application. A controller is responsible for taking a browser request, and then the controller contains logic that determines how to respond to that browser request. So you might make a request to an MVC application, and the controller might decide to return a view. A controller might redirect you off to another controller, or it could even send a big fat error message at you. It's really up to the controller. So it contains all of the application flow control logic. That's what a controller is for. Now, an ASP.NET MVC view typically is what you see in an ASP.NET MVC application. So you typically create a view by creating an HTML page. The HTML page might contain view logic inside of it, so it can contain scripts. For example, you might have scripts that generate, I don't know, a tree view or a menu or anything having to do with view logic. So all that belongs in a view. And finally, model, an ASP.NET MVC model, contains all the rest of your application logic. So all the logic that you wouldn't find in a view or in a controller belongs in the model. So model contains all of your business logic, so all your validation logic. If you're validating form data, for example, that belongs in the model. All your data access logic, again, belongs in the model. All your data access classes, that's part of the model. So model contains, application logic, all the application logic that's not in the controllers or the views. To get a better sense of this distinction between models, views, and controllers, let's take a look at the sample application that we get when we create a new ASP.NET MVC project using Visual Studio. So I have open right now, a brand spanking new Visual Studio ASP.NET MVC project. Let me go ahead and run it, and we'll get the sample project. And right now we're looking at the index view. We're looking at the page rendered out by the index view. Notice that there's two tabs up here. If I click home, again, this just shows the index view. That's the home page. And I can click about, and then I see the about view, the page rendered out by the about view. Now, one thing you should notice is if you look up at the address bar in the browser, notice how I'm able to get to the about page. I can type in home/about, and that causes the about page to be shown. If I want to show the default page, the index page, I can either just type in /home, or I can type in /home/index, and that will show the default page. So let's see how this sample site was implemented. I'm going to shut this down and move back to Visual Studio, the Solution Explorer window. Notice that there are three main folders in the Solution Explorer window. There's a folder called Models, there's a folder called Views, and there's a folder called Controllers. So we have a folder for each type of logic you have in an MVC application. Let's take a look at an example of a controller. We're going to expand out the Controllers folder, double-click on Home Controller, and we have the Home Controller right here. Notice that the Home Controller is just a class. In this case, it's a C# class. It could be a VB.NET class, but it's just a class that derives from the base controller class. And in this case, it contains two methods in it, one called index and one called about. Now, any public methods that you expose from a controller class become actions. Those are actions that you can invoke. And you'll remember a moment ago, the way that we were able to see the home page was we invoked the index action on the home controller. And the way we saw the about page was we invoked the about action on the home controller. Now, in this case, the home controller does the same thing in both actions. When you invoke the index action, it returns a view. It's automatically going to return the index view. When you invoke the about action, it's also going to return a view that's going to return the about view. So we can see these views if we expand the views folder. And you'll notice there's a subfolder called home. This corresponds to the name of the controller. We're in the home controller right now. So if we want to find the views for the home controller, we go to a subfolder called home within the views folder. And then we have, an about .aspx page that corresponds to the view for the about action. and then we have an index.aspx page that corresponds to the index action. So let's go ahead and open up the About view right here. And you'll notice that it's, more or less just HTML. Now, it's not, we don't have the opening and closing body tags. That's because the HTML body tags, that's because this is using a master page for the layout. But inside of this content tag, you'll see that these are just standard HTML tags. So you can put HTML tags in here and you can put scripts. This application doesn't have any model logic at all. It doesn't have anything in its models folder. If we were building a database application, a database-driven application, we would put things like our database model classes within the models folder. For example, you're using Link to SQL, you put your Link to SQL classes in there. If you're using the Entity Framework, you would put, your Entity Framework classes in there. So that's pretty much it. We've taken a look now at the sample application that you get when you create a new MVC project. We took a look at, example of a controller. We looked at some views, and we talked about, what a model is.